All right, folks, I'm now live on Facebook and YouTube, and I'm going to pull up Instagram. What we got today, I'm back from the holiday break and the holiday vacation. So good to be back. Good to see everybody again. So I'm going to give people one more minute to come on because I start on time. So this live stream is supposed to go live at 10 o'clock. It's 1 minute to 10. So I'm fixing to give everybody, as a matter of fact, let me tell my people on Twitter that I'm on so they know where to find me. Okay. All right. So what we're going to talk about today, just right here. We're going to talk about Star Wars not saved. Star Wars not saved. What do you mean by that, Dave? We're going to get into it. Now, uh, before I do that, I want to talk briefly about why I'm not covering Starfleet Academy. And that's because it's just so stupid. I haven't seen this in a long time. I don't know if I've ever seen it. I'm trying to think back in my mind if I've ever actually seen it. What Starfleet Academy has done is that it's so bad, it has united all different kinds of people from all different walks of life to agree as to how bad it is. The only people that have anything good to say about Starfleet Academy are literally the people that created it, working on it, and the actors in it. Those are the only people that have something good to say about Starfleet Academy. So, I mean, it's that bad. It's that bad. So, I have no interest in watching it. I'm not going to watch 5 seconds of it. I'm not going to cover that show. I'm just not going to. I mean, just so you know, because I have no interest in it. And like I said, I've never seen it's remarkable in the sense of it's so bad until everyone is united as to talking about how bad it is, except the actors and producers and director. They're literally the only people that are singing the praises of that show. Nobody else has anything good to say, which is amazing to me. Do you know how bad you have to be for nobody on no platform to have anything good to say about your show? So that launched this week, but I just want to let my audience know I am not following that. I'm not fooling with that. Period. Dot. The end. Okay. And so some other things, they're still talking about the Avengers Doomsday trailer, and they dropped the last trailer, and so but that kind of went over with it. But the big news this week is Kathleen Kennedy stepping down from her position as the head of Lucasfilm. So I wanted to deal with that because I've heard people say for years now that when she leaves, Star Wars will be saved, or when she leaves, that this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And I stopped by to tell you that's just not true. Star Wars is not saved. And so when I do this live stream, I'm going to tell you why. So don't forget to check in the comments. Let me know you're here. Leave me some comments as we go through, because I'll bring your comments up on the screen at the end. Okay? All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up this article. And we're going to break down bit by bit why Star Wars is not saved. Okay, so that should be on your screen now. You should be able to see that. There we go. All right, let me blow that up a little bit if I can. Okay, hopefully that's a little bit better. Yeah, okay. So let's look at this article in the Hollywood Reporter. Star Wars shakeup. Kathleen Kennedy steps down as George Lucas protege Dave Filoni, exec Lin Brennan take over Lucasfilm. First of all, I disagree with that title. It's not a shakeup. She's been talking about this for a while. She herself had talked about training people to replace her and how they talked about many times what happens when she steps down. So trying to make it sound like it's some kind of surprise or like it came out of nowhere. Okay, the change in leadership may mean a new hope for the storied franchise, or it could be an attack of the clones by giving fans more of the same. Right there. That's the subheading of the main title. Let me read it one more time. The change in leadership may mean a new hope for the storied franchise, or it could be an attack of the clones by giving fans more of the same. Now, do you understand what they just said? What they just said to you is that they're admitting that Star Wars has been crap under her leadership. They're admitting that ever since she's taken over, nothing good has happened. It's right there in the subheadline. Why would they say a change in leadership may mean a new hope? Why do you ever need a new hope? You need a new hope when there's despair. You need a new hope where there's destruction. You need a new hope where there's devastation. But saying that you need some new hope is always in reference to some type of event or situation or period of time where things, hey, what's up, Tony? I see you. Good to see you. Where things haven't been as good as they could be, as good as they could have been. So why would they say a new hope? So right there in the subheading, they're admitting that nothing good has happened while she's been in charge. So whether that's overt or covert, whether they did it on purpose, whether they don't realize what they're saying, the net result is still the same because you would not need to have a new hope for the storied franchise, or it could be an attack of the clones by giving fans more of the same. More of the same what? More of the same garbage that we've gotten since she took over. That's what that means. Why would you need that if she was successful? Why would you need that if what she did was so great and phenomenal and groundbreaking and world changing and the right direction for the IP? Why would you need a new hope? Why would you say that you might have an attack of the clones, you might get more of the same? Why is that? That's what I'm trying to get you to understand. Okay. So that is a tacit admission that what's happened under her leadership has not been good. So there may be hope for a new direction, or with the change in leadership, it may just be more of the same. But you wouldn't need a new hope unless what you're coming out of was bad. Do you see that? After 14 years guiding Star Wars into the modern era, through all its ups and downs, there that word is again modern. Modern era, modern audience. Every time we hear that phrase, we know there's some mess forthcoming. We know there's nothing good. Somebody said that to me on Twitter this week. They said, can you give me an example of whenever any IP has been retooled for a modern audience where that turned out well or made an improvement? Is there any example where that was the case? Anybody? Any IP that's been retooled for a modern audience that got better as a result of said retooling. When has that happened ever? Not never. That's when. Not never has that happened. Okay. So Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down as the president of Lucasfilm. Her departure from the company which is effective this week, has long been expected, but still marks a seismic shift for one of the biggest brands in Hollywood. Kennedy had already spent decades producing movies such as Indiana Jones and E.T. when she joined Lucasfilm in 2012, taking on the role of co-chair along Star Wars creator George Lucas. She was elevated to sole head of the company just a few months later, and Disney paid $4 billion for the brand, and Lucas exited. Okay, now right there, what we need to talk about is these actual studio jobs and studio terms if you're not familiar with them. Now, a writer, a script writer, what they do is obvious. Sometimes there are many levels of writers, but not just the sense of a writer's room. Sometimes you have a story, then that story has to be adapted into a screenplay. And a screenplay is exactly what it sounds like. It's written so it can play on the screen. So if something is written to be a self-contained story, you experience it one way. But if we want to mount this on the screen, we have to adapt it to that medium. That's not always the same writer. Those are actually two different jobs. So an original story or an original writer's room can come up with the basic script or idea or story. But then if we want to mount it, it has to be adapted into a screenplay. Okay? A director is the one that's supposed to have a vision for what that screenplay is supposed to look like as he or she films it. They're the ones that tell the actors how to say the lines or how to get into the heads of their characters, or they frame the shots of the screen or many different things, and they put together the scenes, normally non-sequentially, because movies are not shot in order. So they put together the different scenes in the film, because you make a movie 3 times. You make a movie once when you write it, twice when you shoot it, third time when you edit it. Once when you write it, twice when you shoot it, thirdly when you edit it. So you actually make a movie 3 times. So the director is the one who's supposed to have a vision for what that screenplay is supposed to look like once the actual scenes are shot and it's in live action or animation or wherever the medium is. But when it gets on the screen and comes off the page, the director is supposed to be the one that frames those shots and uses his or her eye to create those incredible shots and tells the actors how to say the lines, what mood is supposed to happen in the scene, how the scene is supposed to make you feel. And different directors do that in different ways. Every director has different strengths. Some directors are strong on visuals, poor on dialogue. Some directors are strong on technology, but poor on character interaction. That's one of the things we saw with Lucas in the prequels, because the visuals and everything that he put on and the green screen and all that were one thing, but the relationship between Anakin and Padme was really kind of awkward and stunted and didn't feel organic at all, because that's not really his forte. See that? Okay. So, we talked about writers, talked about screenplay writers, we talked about directors. Next up, we have to talk about an executive producer. An executive producer is the one that pulls all the departments of a movie together and, more than anything else, oversees the financing. So when you exec produce a movie, your main job, besides anything else, is to be sure that the financing is available to have the money to shoot and finish the film. Because you have to deal with all the departments in terms of total budget. So you got to deal with your music, you got to deal with your costuming, your hair and makeup, your lighting, your actor salaries, your different producers, all the rest of your crew, your second unit shooting, so many different things. Okay, so an executive producer is supposed to pull the money together to make sure that the entire project can be financed. Now, a producer, a Hollywood producer, a film producer, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to be hands-on with every department on the film to be sure that what they're doing comes together. The problem with that is that Many times their instincts are wrong. Many times they're numbers people, they're not creative people. So when you hear the phrase studio interference, what that means is that a director had a solid script and a solid vision, but the producer said, no, this needs more, whatever. This movie needs more, you name it. And the director and the actor say, well, that's not really fitting for the story. And the producers say, so audiences, numbers have shown that audiences like it when we do this. For example, going all the way back to Superman, the first Chris Reeve movie, the ending where Superman flies around the earth and he either is spinning the earth backwards or it's a visual effect to show him time traveling. That was originally the ending of the second movie. After Superman went up against Zod and realized what a mistake it was to give up his powers and that he couldn't really beat Zod in there, he turned time back. The Salkinds, the producers, said that the ending of the first movie originally, which was he threw the bomb that was in the Eiffel Tower in space and that let Zod and him out. That was the ending of the first movie. They said that wasn't big enough. So they ganked the movie from Richard Donner for the second movie and they put it on the ending of the first one. That's an example of producer or studio interference. You can see it many times as an audience. You can see when the story was going along fine and then the story is interrupted with some dumb stuff that don't have nothing to do with the flow of the movie. That's because some producer said, well, this needs more this, needs more offbeat humor, needs more snark, needs more romance, needs more whatever. That's the producers butting in. So if you want to hear somebody from the inside talk about that, Nerdrotic did a live stream with Zachary Levi, who played Shazam in the DC movies. And he talked about this. So if you want to look up Nerdrotic stream where Zachary Levi is on it, he talked about how if you want to get a film done and realize your vision, as a matter of fact, I'll see if I can find that and link it for you below so you can check it out if you want to. Zachary Levi said, if you want to have your vision of a movie realized, you have to be a Christopher Nolan or a James Cameron. You have to prove to the studio that on your own, or Steven Spielberg, you have to prove to the studio that on your own, you can make a movie from start to finish on your own that is both critically and commercially successful. Once you do that, a la James Cameron, Steven Spielberg, Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan, then you have carte blanche from the studios to do what you want. Until you do that, you're going to have producers interfering with every department, from the script to the lighting, to the makeup, to the scenes, to the music, to the flow, to the editing. You understand? Another very prominent example of that in sci-fi, and y'all don't forget to let me know you're in the chat. Everybody sign in the chat and give me some comments, because I'll put the comments on at the end. One of the most prominent examples of that in sci-fi is, of course, Alien 3. David Fincher was so frustrated by that movie until he's kind of disavowed it and doesn't like to talk about it because there was so much studio interference. He had a particular vision of how he wanted that movie to go, but they kept saying it needs more of this, needs more of that. And then, when you got too many cooks in the kitchen, then you end up with a mess. You got to have one cook that knows how to season the dish so it comes out the way it needs to. But when you got too many doing that, then that's one example. Another example is, but this might have been the director's fault, because this movie ended his career, and that's Josh Trank. When Josh Trank did Fantastic Four 2015, Fant4stic, that was the end of him. That movie was a mess. There's nobody that worked on that movie that didn't say that movie was a mess. And then he was going off, and then he got on social media talking about they wouldn't let me shoot the movie that I had, and I had a great movie for you guys, and you'll never see it. And he hasn't directed, he hasn't worked since. Why am I saying all this? Because you need to understand that Kathleen Kennedy was a producer. Now, I'm going to show you later in the tweets, people have been trying to give her credits like she was a director. She was a producer. And sometimes she wasn't even a producer. Sometimes she was an assistant to the director. She was an assistant to the producer. And that's where people may get it twisted because they keep trying to give her credit for all these other directors' work. They keep trying to give Kathleen Kennedy credit for stuff she may or may not have done. So when you talk about Cameron or Spielberg or even George Lucas, that's them men. Okay. So if you want to look at a good director producer combo that always gives incredible results, that would be James Cameron and Gail Ann Hurd. They did some incredible work together, like they did Aliens together. So, I mean, that's an example of someone where a director and producer lock in and give you high quality film as a result. That wasn't always the case with Kathleen Kennedy. So there's too many people that have been bending over backwards trying to give her director credit or trying to give her more credit than she may or may not deserve on some of these big budget films. How do we know that's true? Because when you give Steven Spielberg a big budget film, he can deliver. When you give James Cameron a big budget for a film, he can deliver. They said they made the first Terminator on maybe what, $6.5 million. I think I was reading that from Schwarzenegger, $6.5 million. T2 was, his salary alone was that much. T2 was a blockbuster. How do we know that Kathleen Kennedy's contributions have been overblown? Because what has she done with Star Wars since she's been in charge? If she's such this all-fired, magical, mystical, mighty producer, there would be some evidence of that. And what has happened in Star Wars, I told you in the title, they said we need some new hope because she ran it in the ground in 3 movies. Okay, let's keep reading. Kennedy is not departing the galaxy far, far away immediately. See, that's another reason why the title of this live stream of Star Wars is not saved, because she's not really leaving. As somebody formally retiring means I might trade a job title and I might change a salary, but I'm still going to be around. So the formal part is just for the title. You see what I mean? So she's really not, when you really retire, you gone and you don't come to the job no more when you actually retire. When you retire, you get up and you do what you want to do. You take a walk, watch a movie, drink some tea, call your friends or whatever. When you are actually retired. She is still producing, for example, part of her exit. She will continue on as a producer on the next 2 Lucasfilm movies, The Mandalorian and Grogu, May 22, and Star Wars Starfighter. She will pursue other projects outside Lucasfilm as an independent producer. So she's not actually retiring from making movies. And she said that a couple months back. She said, I'm going to make movies till you die. In other words, she was saying, y'all ain't going to never get rid of me. That's what she was really saying. So this is just a surface cosmetic name change kind of thing, because she's still going to be around even on the next 2 Star Wars movies. She's still in it. So in her wake, Executive VP and Chief Creative Officer Dave Filoni has been promoted to oversee the creative direction of the company as President and Chief Creative Officer of Lucasfilm. Okay, I stopped by to tell you that's just a title. If somebody's still pulling the strings from behind the desk, then what difference does that make? It's just a title. You have to have worked in corporate America, and I have, to understand the difference between a title and real power. The people that have the titles and the people that are really affecting the product and the output. So it's a strange advertisement on my on my screen right now. President and GM of Lucasfilm Business, Lynwyn Brennan, I hope I'm not butchering her name, will handle the business side of things as co-president Lucasfilm. Splitting creative and the business duties is a common Disney strategy, with Pixar run by Pete Docter and Jim Morris, and Walt Disney Animation overseen by Jared Bush and Clark Spencer. So, in other words, Filoni is going to be in charge of the creative stuff, and Brendan's going to be in charge of the business stuff, the business side. Okay. Filoni and Brendan will report to Alan Bergman, co-chairman Disney Entertainment. There it is. I told you. I told you. So Kathleen Kennedy's making a statement about leaving, true privilege, blah, blah, blah. Very standard statement. And longtime collaborators and fresh voices, future of storytelling, all that kind of stuff. So it says Kennedy's exit closes out one Star Wars era and launches a new one, with the elevation of Filoni and Brennan posing many questions with few answers yet revealed. One thing is certain: after a period of relative inactivity as the Kennedy succession has settled, Lucasfilm could see development going into hyperdrive under the new leadership. Now, here's the first thing that I want to say, and you're going to hear me repeat it in this live stream. I have to be sure I articulate it well so I communicate clearly what I'm trying to say. I don't think I've ever seen in my life someone make up a narrative and then do this right here. Do la, 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 la. I don't hear nothing else like this. I don't think I've ever seen anything or anyone make up this narrative where she's been this smashing success, where she's been this creative visionary, where she's been the guiding force behind a new era of Star Wars that's just been so successful and beloved. And that she's making some type of grandiose statement I've never seen anything like this. Because I see your comments too, guys, and I'm going to read it because I'm agreeing with a lot of what you're saying. Because that is not what she did when she took over President Lucasfilm. She ran it in the ground, didn't take really but 2 movies. Force Awakens, there was still a lot of hope. Force Awakens did really well. Okay, could have been better, and everybody realized it was a rehash of A New Hope. But The Last Jedi, man, killed everything, and Rise of Skywalker was the funeral. Star Wars has been dead ever since. They haven't mounted a movie. This Mando and Grogu movie will be the first movie they've had since 2019. And Star Wars has always been a movie franchise, not a TV one. She killed it dead in 2 movies. And they're going, la, 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 she's great. La, 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 she's creative. She's this visionary. I've never seen anything like that in my life. I've never seen anybody create a level of narrative that is so detached from reality and then dig their feet in and keep saying, this is the way it is, this way it is. Now, I've seen some other things, some other things in politics, but for right now, I'm talking about this stuff in Star Wars. And in sci-fi and fantasy, I've been trying to think, have I ever seen anything like this? Where they keep trying to pretend that this woman was some type of, that she took Star Wars to a new level, and it was a good level, and everybody loved it, and it was critically and commercially successful, and they can't even sell them toys for them new characters. No, they can't. No, they can't. No, they can't. Okay? So, Filoni was mentored by Lucas and came up through the world of animation, overseeing beloved series such as The Clone Wars, for 10 years, Jon Favreau, and live-action shows such as The Mandalorian and Ahsoka. Brendan joined Lucasfilm in 1999 and rose to president of Industrial Light and Magic before assuming her current role. 2015 is overseeing all of business for the company. Now, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Okay? Clone Wars. A lot of people like and love Clone Wars, for sure. Okay? So we'll give Filoni and Favreau that, or we'll give Filoni that. Not everybody likes it, but it was relatively successful. Some people think it went on a little bit too long. Some people think Rebels is the real show. But then, right here, Somebody's calling me, that's all. But then right here, when we get to the Mandalorian, Mando was good in the first two seasons. Mando should have ended at the end of season two with the return of Luke Skywalker, the Luke Skywalker that we've always wanted to see. Mando season three was a mess like I've never seen. Was a mess like I've never seen. Was a mess. Okay, destroyed Mando, and me in the Book of Boba Fett was a mess, an even bigger mess. Okay, and then Ahsoka was the most bland, boring, nothing burger, and then they just magically turned Sabine Wren into a Jedi, and then they had this big plot about Sabine literally selling out everything in her body to go across the galaxy to meet up with Ezra, and then when they met up, it was just kind of, hi, how you doing? Just kind of meh, and then the flying whales, and it's just so trying to pretend that all of these creations and all of this content has just been so groundbreaking is just not true. Okay, now here's what I'm talking about. They talk about her veteran producer boasting her 8 Best Picture Oscar noms, Sixth Sense and Lincoln, and she quoted J.J. Abrams to direct Star Wars: The Force Awakens. But the $2 billion wasn't because of him. It was because people were thirsty for more Star Wars. People amaze me when they do that. Just like the reason that Captain Marvel made $1 billion is because they sandwiched it between Infinity War and Endgame. The 2 biggest grossing superhero movies of all time. That is why Captain Marvel made all that money, not because of Captain Marvel. Okay? And then it's because people were hungry, right, from Revenge of the Sith, and then stands the top grossing movie of all time, domestic box office and all that. That's because of fan demand, not because the movie was a rehash of A New Hope, but also we could begin to see how they were committing, a Mary suicide, as Neurotic says, or Mary Ray Sue Palpatine was taking over everything because she was had all the skills, could fly the Falcon better than Han, bypass the compressor, could resist Jedi mind tricks, lightsaber skill, all that, just like magic, no growth. So we knew when we saw that film, we were like, it had potential, but the red flags were there. Okay. Rogue One, The Last Jedi, no. Solo actually lost money. Rise of Skywalker dropped. How is it that what's the name? Force Awakens grosses $2 billion, Last Jedi drops to 1.33, and Rise of Skywalker only grosses $1 billion, half of what Force Awakens did? How is that? If the movies were getting progressively better, why is that? Please explain. Okay. So I just want to say that. So there's some more tweets I'm going to read because there were so many tweets this week. And then we all know what happened with the Acolyte. What's happening with Starfleet Academy now? Starfleet Academy is the Acolyte of Star Trek. Because we know what happened with Lessa Headland and the Acolyte, with the lesbian space witches. Okay? So that's all I want to read of that one because I want to show you this one. I want to show you this article right here. Disney will bring the original Star Wars trilogy to Disneyland in the theme park pivot. The company launched Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland in 2019, set in the timelines of the sequel trilogy, but will bring Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, and John Williams' iconic score to the land this spring. When everybody saw this movie, everybody been saying the same thing. When I say everybody, I mean across all social media platforms, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, you name it, everybody been saying the same thing. This right here. Why didn't they do that the first time? Why did it take them all this time? I'll tell you why. Because they thought them stupid sequel trilogy characters were going to sell. They thought they could just throw out everything about Star Wars that fans fell in love with and that was going to sell. And it failed. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. If she was so successful and what they was doing was so right, Why did they have to go back to the OG characters? Because remember how George Lucas got rich. For those of you that don't know, George Lucas got rich because he kept the toy and merchandising rights from Star Wars: A New Hope. Because back then, movie studios didn't understand movies and toy tie-ins. So Lucas kept those rights. The Star Wars toys blew up so much until it made him rich. And he financed Empire Strikes Back because he had enough money to do it himself, if you don't know that backstory. That's when movies got a clue as to how much money was in toy and merchandising because of Lucas and A New Hope, if you didn't know that. They can't start. So Star Wars, what I'm trying to say is that Star Wars is the franchise that invented toy sales. They can't sell the toys of the sequel trilogy characters. They can't sell them toys. There are video after video of people going into stores and you see the dust on the shelves. You see them toys on clearance, they can't give them away. And this, as the emperor would say, now the failure is complete. As Vader would say, now his failure is complete. Their failure is complete. They tried everything they do to push out classic Star Wars in favor of the sequel trilogy, and it has never worked. And with Galaxy's Edge, didn't work. They had to bring back the OG characters. That don't tell you nothing. Walt Disney Company is making a major change to a galaxy far, far away. Companies changing the timeline of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge world of Disneyland with plans to bring characters and elements from the original Star Wars trilogy to the land. That will include characters like Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Princess Leia Organa roaming the land, as well as bringing John Williams' iconic scores. They didn't even have John Williams music. How can you have Star Wars and not have John Williams music? That doesn't even make any sense, does it? That score is just as much a part of the experience as the films themselves. That fanfare, that Star Wars music, man, there's nothing like it. They didn't have that at the theme park, so they had to bring that back to you. Changes go into effect beginning at the end of April this year. Galaxy's Edge and Walt Disney World. So this is just Disneyland. Walt Disney World will remain unchanged for now. Operative phrase for now, because I guarantee they're going to do it there too. New characters will join other characters that are currently roaming Batu, R2, Chewie, Mandalorian, and Grogu. Okay. Now I want to show you what this looks like. I'm going to show you a screen from this is from Geeks and Gamers 2. So this is Ryan and Theory. I want to show you just a screenshot so you can see what we're talking about. Here it is. Can you see that? Good. You should be able to see that. Okay. So in other words, they're putting the sequel stuff over here on the side, and they're putting all the original trilogy stuff here. So they're kind of shuffling off the Buffalo, all that stuff that didn't work, Ray and Finn and Rose Tico and them, and they got to bring back the OG characters. So if she's such a phenomenal game-changing producer and all of her choices were such, good and right choices for the franchise, why is this happening? Why? Why is it happening? Can you tell me? Because don't nobody want to see Ray. Don't nobody want to see Kylo Ren. Don't nobody want to see Rose Tico. Don't nobody want to see Poe Dameron. Don't nobody see none of them folks. The Porgs, none of them folks. Don't nobody want to see that. Don't nobody want to see them, and they can't sell them as toys. That don't tell you nothing. Okay? Now, what we're going to get to next is we're going to get to some of the tweets that I want to read. Because Twitter blew up with this news. And those of y'all that are on Twitter, you know it. When this news hit, Twitter went crazy. So I want to show you some of these tweets, and then I'm going to get to your comments and put your comments on the screen too, because I see them, so I want to be sure to get them on the screen. Okay. We have this is Kathleen Kennedy talking. We have the Mandalorian movie with Jon Favreau coming next, which also is great. That comes out in May. As soon as I get back into town, I'm sitting down with John and looking at that. So she still got her hand in it. That's why the title of this live stream is that Star Wars is not saved. She still got her hand in the Mando and Grogu movie. Okay? So I'm sitting down with John looking at that the whole time. I've been shooting Starfighter. We've been working on effects that are going into that movie. We finished shooting in November. We had a long post-production on that. So I'll oversee a lot of those effect shots cut into John's movie. I'll get myself re-immersed and get that finished. She still got her hand in it. That's what I meant when I told you at the top of this live stream that it's just a surface cosmetic kind of title change, but functionally she's still doing all what she's been doing. So the next two Star Wars movie outings that we get are still going to have Kathleen Kennedy's fingerprints all over it. You understand that? So I just read you that about going into hyperdrive. Okay, so here comes Dave Filoni, and he's just got a standard statement, So it's one of those things. I understand protocol. I understand that, you don't want to be unnecessarily rude. You don't want to Zegler yourself. You don't want to put your foot in your mouth so bad until it becomes your personality and it becomes all the people remember you for. So even though I know some things are formality, even though I know some things are protocol, I'm not always for those things. But on the other hand, sometimes it's necessary. So, Filoni's statement, my love of storytelling was shaped by films of Kathleen Kennedy and George Lucas. I never dreamed I would be privileged to learn the craft of filmmaking from both of them, from Ray to Grogu. And Kathy has overseen the greatest expansion of Star Wars storytelling on screen that we have ever seen. Greatest expansion. And none of them characters sell. None of them characters stick. Don't nobody want to see them. The 3 movies of the sequel trilogy made less money each movie. How do you explain that? If it was an expansion. Remember, I told you, they're just doing this. They're just no feet in reality, just la, 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 la. It's all great, okay. I'm incredibly grateful to Kathy, George, Bob Iger, and Alan Bergman for their trust and opportunity to lead Lucasfilm in this new role, doing a job I truly love. May the force be with you. Okay, so in all fairness, what would we expect him to say? What else was he going to say? What else would he say? I understand that. But it's not successful. Okay. So again, she's still producing despite retiring this week. That means she's not retired. She told y'all she ain't gonna never retire. She is never not gonna wake up and be involved in making movies. She's gonna do that till she die. She told y'all you ain't never getting rid of me. Okay. Now here, I want to talk about this because here's an indication of how she don't know what she's doing. Kathleen Kennedy says she put Alden Ehrenreich, am I saying that right? Alden Ehrenreich in an impossible situation to replace Harrison Ford as Han Solo. As wonderful as Alden Ehrenreich was, and he was really good, it's a wonderful actor. We put him in an impossible situation. Once you're in it and once you're committed, you've got to carry on. I think I have a bit of regret about that, but not about the movie making and filmmaking. I don't have regrets about that. I just think conceptually that we did it too soon. Yep, nope. If you had any instincts about it, you would understand that you can't replace Harrison Ford. Robot Head says Kathleen Kennedy still has no idea. She just can't or won't join the dots between The Last Jedi backlash and Solo failing. That's right. Didn't nobody want to watch Star Wars no more once you got your hands on it? Say that one more time. Didn't nobody want to watch Star Wars anymore once you got your hands on it? You understand that? So they're just doing this. Okay, Solo lost money. And Solo was the one where they hinted that Lando was hooking up with a robot, a droid. What? I don't want to see that. No. Okay. The Hunt for Ben Solo movie script was great, says Kathleen Kennedy. Anything's a possibility if somebody's willing to take a risk. Take a risk. Take a risk. Why didn't this Hunt for Ben Solo movie script get greenlit? Because it was too tied in to probably the Zahn novels and probably featuring more of the children of Luke and Mara and Han and Leia. And they didn't want to do that. They broke Han and Leia up. They made Han a deadbeat dad. They had Kylo Ren kill his own father, and Leia have little to no reaction to it. And Leia hugged Rey and not Chewie, and because they wanted to tear everything up. If it was such a great script, why didn't it go? Why didn't you have the instincts to grow with a story that would have been better, that maybe people would have actually enjoyed? Because it was too much like Wright. That's why. Too much like what Zahn did. Too much like honoring that world. That's why. So instead, we got The Last Jedi in there. Kathleen Kennedy says the script for James Mangold and Bo Willimond's Star Wars film is incredible. It's currently on hold. It would be someone else's call that gets made. Why is that? Follows the origins of the Jedi set 25,000 years in the past. We already know what that means. What that means is they're going to say that a woman was the first Jedi. And they're going to say that the women did everything. We already know. Just like with Wheel of Time. We already know what that means. Okay. Derek Anderson, the DA, says, let's give her full credit, guys. She also destroyed Indiana Jones and Willow. True. Indiana Jones, man, that's another embarrassment. Another embarrassment. First of all, I think Harrison Ford should have retired from making the movies because Indy is an adventure icon, and it's an adventure IP. So I think he just hit a point where age-wise, I think he should have let that go. But they had to wait until they got Phoebe Waller-Bridge in there, and she totally embarrassed him, humiliated him, slapped him. He's doddering. You don't know what he's doing, just like Rey, flying the Falcon better than Han. Nerdrotic says the woman who destroys Star Wars is officially leaving Lucasfilm, but she's not. She's just changing job titles. Okay. Steve Sellers, my friend Shade Wing, says this was exactly my thought at the time. You can't replace Harrison Ford in one of his most iconic roles and expect it to go down well. There it is, right there. There it go. Okay. Stephanie from My Nerdy Home. Even her retirement put a woman and made it lame again. South Park, man, that might be their most memed, repeated meme thing of all time. So, I mean, Stephanie not wrong. Lame and gay. Okay. Kathleen Kennedy hints Simon Kinberg's Star Wars trilogy may be the next major project to go into production. Mangoes is really on the back burner, as is Soderbergh's. I think the ones by Taika and Donald are still somewhat alive. Taika Waititi, the one that gave us Ragnarok and Thor: Love and Thunder. That's going to really be up to the new team to figure out. Dave, I know that Dave and Lin are very much on board with what Simon Kinberg's doing. There will be a new trilogy in the timeline of things that takes you well into 2030 plus. So that's really what's up next. Really? Do we care? Will we care? Do they not understand that this is a dead franchise and it's never going to be what it was? I don't care about all this. Why? Why? Remember when Kathleen Kennedy first took over and she did that, I think it was a con, or maybe she did, I forgot what it was. She came on the stage with all the Star Wars content behind her that she was going to do. How much of that content actually got made? Do you remember that? Do you remember when she did that? All them shows that she said were going to happen, all the movies that she said were going to happen, how many of that actually happened? Oops. I switched off. Wait, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, I switched off of Twitter. I didn't mean to do that. So how many, I was actually just trying to look for a picture of what I was talking about. But if you think about it, how many of them Star Wars movies and shows had, because their pattern has been to announce, then to cancel, to announce, then to cancel, to announce, then to cancel. That's been her pattern since she's been in there. It's been announcing and canceling, announcing and canceling, announcing and canceling. That's been the pattern, has it not? So that's what I mean when I say I don't believe none of what she's saying. I don't believe none of that. Okay, let's finish this out, then I'm going to get to your comments because I'm loving you guys' comments. Okay, once again, a protocol, based exit speech. Okay. Robot Head says she made. So Joe Russo's got to take, about to be lots of bad takes about Kathleen Kennedy, but she made. She made, you mean she worked on. There's a difference. That's right. So this is what I'm talking about. Indiana Jones, Poltergeist, ICT, Gremlins, Back to the Future, Goonies, Bad is not included, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Cape Fear, Schindler's List, Jurassic Park, Twister, and more. She's goated. That was the script and the directors. How do we know that? Because what happened when she took over the Star Wars franchise? If it was true that that was her, then we would have got a better sequel trilogy. How can people even argue that? This lady ruined more children's dreams than Freddy Krueger from wow. That Star Wars girl, Anna says, like I said, this dude is an idiot, and him taking over won't fix things. Anna calling Filoni out, just point blank. Okay. Talked about that, them changing Galaxy's Edge. Talked about that. Okay, so here's what I want to say. Whoever says women can't achieve the impossible, so that Kathleen Kennedy did what everyone thought could never be done, putting Star Wars in the grave. Wow. All right, G Prime. Okay, so here's what I want to say. Here's what I've been trying to show you with all these various and sundry tweets. How can you not read the room as badly as they're not reading the room? I want you to notice, because this is the same thing that's happening with Starfleet Academy. I want you to notice that nobody's saying anything good about her except the people still in it. No fans, no commenters, no tweets, no nothing, except people still in that Hollywood circle, people still in trying to make their movies. How can you be this oblivious to everybody's reaction to you stepping down? Is what's completely amazing me. How can you be this oblivious to it? How? Can they not see what people are saying on Twitter? Just Twitter alone. I mean, you can get on YouTube, my video, but there's tons of videos been talking about this. Can people not see the reaction to her stepping down? People making tweets like "Ding dong, the witch is dead" and all that. I saw one tweet where they did a GIF of the end of Phantom Menace, where the Gungans and the what's the names, the Gungans and Amidala's people and them were celebrating, talking about "Ding dong, the witch is dead" on Naboo and them. Can they not see this is how people are reacting to her leaving? And they're just, I mean, I don't understand this level of obliviousness where you keep touting the praises and touting the accomplishments and singing the praises of someone that failed over and over and over again, ran the most successful sci-fi and fantasy franchise into the ground in 2 movies. And when they leave, everybody's celebrating like the Wicked Witch just melted. And they're just la, 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 we don't see it. Okay, so let me start putting some of your comments on the screen because I just don't understand. I really don't. Okay. Cajun says, only seen that FS once, talking about when I was talking about Josh Trank. I think I've seen all I wanted to see from that. That movie destroyed his career. He hasn't been back since. I have never watched Fance Forsig, by the way. As soon as I saw Michael B. Jordan is not Johnny Storm. As soon as I saw the casting, I was like, nope. I knew that was some mess. I have never watched that movie, and I won't. Derek, I'm no longer a fan of Star Wars. I'll always have a love for the original trilogy, but the only thing possible at Star Wars is Mando. Even that is questionable, but the sequels are terrible. So many people feel that way. So many people feel exactly like that. So many people are like, we love the original, and maybe some people love Rogue One, some people didn't. Rogue One to me wouldn't be anything without the Vader scenes. So, didn't Ryan Johnson convince them to pivot to a female fan base? I'm not as sure about that. What I am sure about is that Ryan Johnson has said repeatedly his goal was to be subversive and divisive. His goal was to shake things up, but it wasn't good storytelling subversive. It was spite. It was to own the chuds, the same way that Jessica Gao said about She-Hulk. He has said that publicly more than once. Humiliating Luke, humiliating everybody. He meant to do exactly what he did. He has said that. But I don't know specifically if he meant pivoted to a female fan base. Plus, J.J. Abrams did that. And Kathleen Kennedy did that with their insert character of Rey. And the most amazing thing is that women love Star Wars as it was too. So whenever they're talking about updating it for a more female audience, you can't take a boy brand, turn it into a girl brand, and think that's going to work. Somehow they haven't figured that out. All these billions of dollars later, you can't take a boy brand and turn it into a girl brand and think that's going to work. No, you don't. You need to cater to the customers that are buying the product that made it worth tens of billions. Okay. They lost me in Mando season 3. Me too. That was the Bo-Katan DeLorean, and Mando was a side character, was comic relief in his own show. No. I think Star Wars needs to move away from anything Star Wars. They attempted with acolytes, but it didn't stick the landing. Star Wars needs to move away from the Skywalkers if they're not going to do the Zahn stuff, the Timothy Zahn extended universe trilogy and the world he created, where Luke and Mara eventually get married and all that. If they're not going to do that stuff, then they need to move away from the Skywalkers. There's still plenty of stories there to tell because it's such a large universe. It's just that what they don't understand is that people don't care anymore. The momentum is gone. I don't want to see, I don't know if I'm going to see this Mando and Grogu movie or not. If my son wants to see it, maybe we'll see it. But if my son's not interested, I don't know if I'm going to see it or not. And I have no interest in the Star Wars Starfighter movie. Nothing about it interests me. The momentum is gone. It's a dead brand. It's a dead franchise. So I know they think they're going to resurrect it. Okay, Iraq, right. You said, sorry, move away from anything. So, right. That's right. So maybe if they do that, maybe, I don't know. But it's never going to be what it was. They're never going to get that global audience back like they had. It's not going to happen. You can't spend all this time bashing those people and then saying, oh, please come back and give me money again. People were disappointed with prequels. Then they promised that the sequel trilogy was a return to form. And I personally would like to apologize to George Lucas. We didn't know, sir. No, it's not a return to form. Marvel keeps saying that too. It's old school Marvel. We're so back. They ain't never been back. Endgame was it. They ain't coming back neither. Okay. True popcorn, yes. I mean, Palpatine scenes alone trumped the entire sequel arc. I have never watched, by the way, Rise of Skywalker. I refuse. I'll never forgive them for reviving Palpatine and diminishing Anakin's arc. I know they did it in the novels, but the novels were optional canon. Trying to say that Rey was always the chosen one. No, he wasn't. Star Wars was about Anakin Skywalker. Simple, period, dot, the end. So I don't listen to none of that foolishness that they try to purport. I don't like, no, bringing Palpatine back. And somehow Palpatine returned. So They did do it in the EU, and they did do it with some graphic novels, and they did get into the cloning, but that was different and better. I was checked out of those movies the moment Luke tossed the lightsaber over his shoulder. I knew it was over right there. Yep, we'll never forget that. As soon as we saw Luke, as soon as we saw that, everybody, I remember what happened in the movie theater when that happened. When that happened, the entire movie theater got dead silent. You know how when a hush falls over a crowd, when everybody just kind of all at the same time just kind of shut down? That's what happened when we saw that scene in Last Jedi. When Luke just tossed his lightsaber like that, everybody was like, it was over. It was over. It was over. Okay. Toys are what carry shows and movies. Star Wars started that. That's why it's so telling, and it's such a shame that they can't sell toys for the sequel trilogy characters. I just assumed Finn was going to be a Jedi, which supposedly was the plan until Ryan Johnson convinced them to 100% give it to Rey. I don't know if that was him, and I don't know if he convinced them. The movie that we saw supposedly was his first draft. He was just making up stuff just to do stuff, just to be contrary, just to be subversive, just to make people mad. So yes, Finn was set up with the best potential arc. A stormtrooper that broke his training and realized he didn't want to serve the Empire anymore, and maybe had latent force abilities. I mean, that whole premise is fantastic. Stormtrooper, all the damage he's done. What kind of nightmares do you have as a stormtrooper when you think about all the people you've killed and all the families and all the dirt you've done for the Empire? And then Finn woke up one day and said, I can't do this anymore. And then maybe he's also got force abilities. I mean, what a setup. And so Ryan Johnson on purpose reduced him to do nothing but run around screaming, Ray, Ray. And then, so I don't know if he convinced them to do it. Kathleen Kennedy just let him do whatever he wanted to do. How do we know that? How did that movie get shot and mounted if she was a producer? I just want you to think about it. Don't ever let anybody gaslight you. If she's a producer and they have producers on that movie and they saw The Last Jedi and then let it go forward, they hated Luke, they hated Lucas, they hated Star Wars, they hate us. And they made it clear. I mean, that's why you can't gaslight me on that foolishness, okay? I hated the fact that they play with the idea in our faces. Yeah, the whole tease about Finn being more than he was would have been a story worth watching. But nope, it's all about Mary Ray Sue Palpatine and how she can do everything better than everybody with no training. Finn and Kylo were the most interesting characters. They could have had something with Finn, but they were hell bent on Rey. I agree with everything except Kylo. I cannot stand Kylo Ren. He's the most stupid, most boring, most nothing burger of a character I've ever seen in my life. Throwing tantrums, hitting stuff with his lightsaber. He's nothing. He's a child. Just, and has a nerve to put down Darth Vader, had a nerve to put down Anakin Skywalker. Your grandfather had a nerve to hate Leon Han. You moron. He's nothing. I can't stand him. I cannot stand Kylo Ren. Have I said that plainly enough? So, no. I may be too old for toys, but I like a brand new X-Wing, Snowspeeder, and Millennium Falcon to display. What's wrong with that? You ain't got to apologize for that. What's wrong with that? I said, go for it. If you watch The Last Jedi, it's pretty obvious the demo they were going after. Rose and Finn in a will they, won't they scenario, Kylo shirtless, Rey's whole arc. Yeah, that's a good point. But again, they did green light it, and they did put it on the screen, and they did go forward with it. So, but that whole Rose and Finn thing, that was another head scratcher. Everybody was like, and then when Luke came and kissed his sister, when Luke came on the scene, he was a forced projection. Leia didn't know that's not really your brother in the flesh. After all that time apart, that's the best you could do was force protect him. You couldn't be bothered to actually go over there? Do you realize how insulting that would be if you're Leia? Uh-uh. Mark Hamill has been on Twitter lately blasting J.J. Abrams too for not giving the fans the reuniting of all the main characters and how J.J. crapped on him. Yes, I talked about that. I tweeted about that. We talked about that. Yes, we've seen that, and I'm just glad, finally glad that Hamill's letting all that out. Because remember, Hamill was very vocal at the beginning when they were filming The Last Jedi. He said, "I fundamentally disagree with every choice about Luke in this movie." Remember, Hamill's on tape saying that. And then they had to shut him up to promote the movie. So then they kind of shut him down. And now he's back on there telling the truth. The guy that played Luke Skywalker knew none of this is right for Luke. This is not Luke. That's Jake Skywalker. That's Jake. That ain't Luke. Okay. So we got to dial J.J. Abrams in there too. But my point is that Kathleen Kennedy approved it all. None of these so-called visionary people, not Kennedy, not Abrams, not Rian Johnson, none of them knew that we needed to see Luke, Han, and Leia on screen in action one more time. That we needed a shot of them plus R2, Chewie, and 3PO in the Falcon one last time. And J.J. Abrams said, Hamill said, he said that it's not Luke's story anymore and shut him down. What? I don't know how you can not read a room that hard. Okay. Irony is they'll probably one day make a movie about the behind the scenes power plays during her reign. It'll be twice as interesting as anything she's put out since she took over. Probably, but it'll be a long time because a lot of people have to die to do that. And a lot of people have to be willing to go on record to really do that justice. So that's going to be a while, but probably before it's all over. Jar Jar Abrams, right. Nerdrotic coined that term too, I think. My theory and gut feeling is these writers and directors are not fans of Star Wars. That's the result of what we've been getting the past 10 years or so. That's exactly right. That's not a theory and gut feeling. That is spot on. You are 100% correct. They hate George Lucas. They hate Star Wars. They hate the characters and hate the fans that love them. That's why they've trashed them. Another thing is the merchandising. They don't want to have to pay Lucas any royalties. They don't want him getting any more money. So that's why they substituted all their lame characters for the OG characters, and none of them worked. No royalties for him, but now whatever royalty deals he still has, if he still has any in place, he got to get paid. Some of them have openly said that. Yes, they have. They don't hide it. That's right. Not surprising. No, that's right. Speaking of fans, the latest AI short movies from fans are turning heads and blowing minds. Yes, I talked about this in my last live stream. Like Beggar's Canyon, where Luke finds his green kyber crystal, amazing stuff. It really is. It really is. AI has already gotten to the point where we're finally getting the likenesses of the characters and they look like the actors. And sometimes the lip movements are kind of stiff, but they're getting better. But it's advanced to the point where now the fan films are actually showing us the scenes we want to see, and they're doing much better. So I know they're going to try really hard to shut this down, but I'm like, how can you not read the room again? Because it's too late. Just like YouTube changed the game, this AI growth is going to change the game. And eventually fans are going to make the films we wanted to see. The first one that I saw that I really loved was when they did Batman versus Darth Vader and Superman. I love that one. And then also the one where they redid the fight between Vader and Obi-Wan in A New Hope. I love that one. So that kind of stuff is going to increase. I know they're going to ban those films from YouTube. When they do, we're just going to put them on different platforms. That's what's coming. Okay. There are only 3 indie movies: Raiders, Doom, and Last Crusade. All others just Elseworld stuff. I'll take that. I'll take that. If we say that Indy's adventure ended with Last Crusade, I'll take that. Thank God her content didn't get made. Yeah, I mean, if we see what she did with the main movies, If all that stuff that she wanted to get made actually got made, what would that have looked like? Have you ever thought about that? What would that have looked like if they had made Rogue Squadron? We know what would have happened. What would have happened was they would have had a woman on Rogue Squadron, and she was better than Wedge. She was the best fighter pilot of all time. She was the greatest thing ever. She ran circles around the boys, and they just looked stupid. There's no way that would have happened. There's just no way. Okay. This all makes me think of the adage, genius skips a generation. I think there is hope. We have nothing but time, and someone will get it right eventually. You are more optimistic than I. So that's cool. That's your sentiment. That's awesome. Hold on to it. But you are more optimistic than I. I do not believe that. The rightest thing that's going to happen is the fan films. I don't think we're going to get rightness back at a leadership level. But I'll tell you why. The reason why is because every time something has been quote unquote right, it's because the director had to fight the producers in the studios to make it happen. And my favorite example of that is, of course, Richard Donner in the first Superman movie. Okay. He had to fight the Salkinds. And the Salkinds, what they wanted from the beginning was Superman 3. Goofy, funny, just a big dumb farm boy from Kansas. Let's bring Richard Pryor in. That's the movie they wanted. Donner had to fight to get the Superman movie that we love and the Christopher Reeve acting that we love. You can see the humor change in Superman 2 when Lester took over. So, and then also another thing that happens is what happened with Nolan is that he doesn't really have the vision that people think he does. Batman Begins wasn't bad, but it stripped all the magic out of Batman. You can't ground Batman. So it wasn't bad. I've watched it more than once. And of course, Heath Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight was iconic, legendary, incredible. And then his untimely death, of course, seals that in time. But The Dark Knight Rises was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. You will never get me to like that film. Everything about that film was wrong, except Anne Hathaway as Catwoman. So sometimes what happens is the director doesn't have a full vision. People praise James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's all he does. I will hear no arguments to the contrary that James Gunn is not a one-trick pony. Every piece of content that he writes, directs, produces overseas is another version of Guardians. It even has the same kind of P filter on it. So that's why I don't think someone in leadership is going to get it right, because they never get it right. Somebody has to fight. People giving Kevin Feige all that credit. The Russos did have a vision, but the Russos only like Captain America. They destroyed the Hulk. They destroyed Thor, so did Taika Waititi. They destroyed Vision, which is my favorite comic book Avenger. They destroyed the men, if you notice. And then Iron Man died. Iron Man dying was just like Superman dying in Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, when he took the kryptonite weapons and flew them into Doomsday, because we had Wonder Woman right there. Wonder Woman can fly. We had Diana right there. Superman didn't have to go near the kryptonite. She could have flown the weapons. Iron Man didn't have to die. You know who could have put on the glove and done the snap? Captain Marvel. Even if Carol died, didn't have to kill Iron Man. They hated the men except for Captain America. And you can see making them tweets, trying to, pump up Captain Kenny and all that. You can see what's going on there. What we got with the Captain American trilogy, and really with Winter Soldier, because Civil War kind of destroys Cap's character, but really with Winter Soldier, what we got was a fluke. That's what I'm saying. Anytime they get it right at a high level, it's more of an accident or a fluke than anything else. That's why I'm not as optimistic. But I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying that's my perspective on it. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but they got Mask of the Phantasm right. They got that right. With live action, how have we gotten Batman that right live action? We came close with Burton, but Star Wars reached their Batman and Robin stage a while ago. Needs to hibernate at least 10 years. Yeah, but they're not going to do that either. Once an IP becomes profitable, what they're going to do is milk it for all it's worth, milk it until there's no more milk left in the cow teats. They're going to drain it dry until it's just running to the ground. So I agree with this idea, and I'm not the only one who said it, that the wise thing to do for Star Wars at this point would be to let it rest. Just like that would have been a wise thing to do for the MCU as well. Let it rest just for a couple of years. Give people a break from it. Let people miss it. Then when you bring it back, you can have some more excitement. You can have a whole lot more things if you do it that way, but they're not going to do that. Right, right, exactly. Right. Everything I just said, Iraq said. That's right. Like we're way past Batman Forever at this point. We're in Arnold's freeze, corny, poison ivy levels here. That's right. We really are. It's a shame too. I think MCU is going to take the wrong lessons from DP and Wolverine and just doing a bad strike. Yes. Yes. Most of the movies are just going to be cameos and winks and member bears. Member, especially with the X-Men. Lord have mercy. We're going to be so disappointed with what they do with the X-Men. The Fox X-Men are going to die one more time. We're going to see Patrick Stewart as Professor Xavier die one more time. We're going to be so disappointed with what they do with the X-Men. I'm actually kind of dreading it now. They could have done the Zahn novels in the movies back in the 90s as they're absolutely stellar. They sure could have. But remember, when Kathleen Kennedy got in charge, she decanonized them and said, well, no. Then she said, we're making this stuff up as we go. It's not like we have books and other materials to draw from. Do you remember when she said that? She said that. Do you remember that? Then they started stealing from the EU books of Zahn without giving him credit. They started stealing ideas from those books and incorporating them. Do you remember that? It's been a mess. It's been a mess. But I must say, I've said it before, but I'll say it again here. I must say, I'm glad that Kathleen Kennedy never got her hands on Mara Jade because I love Mara. Mara has, if you haven't read the Zahn novels, you got to read them. Mara has one of the most interesting arcs in the whole post Return of the Jedi world. And I'm not talking about the sequel trilogy because that's nothing. I'm talking about the Zahn novels kept Star Wars alive after Return of the Jedi. Mara Jade, man, she's a rich, layered, and incredible character with an incredible arc. So I must say that I'm glad that Kathleen Kennedy never got her hands on Mara Jade. I will say that. I thought they picked Ray because they were doing a loose adaptation of the Solo twins, and Rian Johnson convinced them to take it a step further. No. Ray's an insert character. If she had been Jaina Solo, everything would be different. Do you know how different it would be if she had actually been a Solo or an actual Skywalker instead of a Palpatine? They weren't going to do that. They were never going to do that. Force projection was really bad. It really was. It was insulting of Luke to not even go see his sister one more time. And then he overdosed on the Force and died. Mark Hamill said, shouldn't Yoda have told me that? See, Hamill's finally been letting it fly. We understand his politics, but now he's letting it fly on the Star Wars IP. And he said, shouldn't Obi-Wan and Yoda have told me you can overdose on the Force? But you couldn't be bothered to get in the ship and go see your sister in person and fight in person? You couldn't do that, bro? For all the people who say outside is toxic, they equally act like buttholes when we didn't like The Last Jedi. And see, that's the whole thing I don't like. You have to be from my generation to remember what I'm about to say. But fandom wasn't ever divided like it is now. We had friendly rivalries like Star Trek people versus Star Wars people. We had, when we would sit in the comic shops and play games and just talk trash and meet each other at conventions, but it was all in good fun. Now, it's so political and people making death threats and doing crazy stuff until it's not like it is now. So I feel sorry for some of the younger people where the fandom divides that they know now is all they know. It wasn't always that way. People, as Undead Nerd saying, acting like buttholes because it used to be you could say, I like this content. Now it's, if you don't like this content, you're a sexist, racist, misogynist, phobic, bigoted, whatever. And we know who started that. Force Awakens isn't as good as I remember. Granted, I was 9 when the movie came out. I think I've only watched it once. I've never wanted to watch it again. Didn't Lucas call them slave owners? He called them white slave owners. Lucas did the same thing that Hamill did. He got candid and honest about how he really felt as to what was going on and then had to backtrack. Lucas said, I have messed up and I have sold my baby. I've sold my property to white slave owners that are going to abuse it and abuse the fans, milk it for everything that it's worth, and destroy everything that's good about it. Yes, he did say that. His exact words were white slave owners. That's on video. Look it up. So yeah, that is what he said. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is a good movie, and it's not one of my favorites. I'm not saying that's not true. I'm just saying it doesn't do anything for me. So when did the whole gender war start? You're sexist if you don't like Kathleen Kennedy crap. When did that start? That really started with Sarkeesian when she said everything is sexist, everything is racist, and everything is problematic. I don't know why they listen to her. That's actually what started it. What codified it in sci-fi was when Melissa McCarthy said of Ghostbusters 2016, she said, if you don't like it, it's just because you're a misogynist. If you don't like, 4 women being in the lead, you're just a sexist misogynist. And everybody was like, no, baby, no. People didn't like that movie because the movie was poor, not because it had female leads. I have called that out as chicken scratch from the moment I heard it, because we can go way back in time to find strong female heroes that we all loved. I mean, we can go way back in time. We can go back to the original English Avengers. We can go back to Agent 99 and Get Smart. We can go back to Mighty Isis. We can go back to the Bionic Woman. We can go back to Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. We can go back to Tarzan and the Super 7. We can go back to the 2 biggest female icons in sci-fi are Ellen Ripley and Sarah Connor. We got Zoe Washburn, Buffy, the Vampire Slayer. I mean, Trinity from The Matrix. This is all last century. This is all 20th century. So that whole thing that we haven't liked strong women in sci-fi has been Lieutenant Uhura, Star Trek, the original series, has been a bunch of crap from the jump. Janeway from Voyager, been a bunch of crap. It's been a lie from the jump. That we as a sci-fi fantasy community have never supported strong women, that's a lie. So it's a narrative they invented to be divisive. That's why I'm sorry they ever let sci-fi and fantasy get infected with that foolishness. That everything was sexist and everything was racist, because no, it wasn't. But they listened to that. And then Brie Larson got up several years back and said, I don't need a 40-year-old white dude to tell me what didn't work for him about A Wrinkle in Time. It wasn't made for him. Remember when she said that? More gender-based stuff. She codified the phrase, it wasn't made for you. So that's when not just white dudes, a lot of males started saying, oh, okay. Oh, it wasn't made for me? Cool. You don't need my attention. You don't need my money. When they made the Charlie's Angels reboot, they said it wasn't for white males. It wasn't for you chuds. Then they said later, why didn't white men go see this movie? They said She-Hulk was made specifically to own the chuds. So that's when it started, and that's how it developed, for those of you that don't know. Okay? I was hoping Snoke would be Jar Jar. That would have been really funny. Do you want to know who I thought Snoke was going to be? I thought Snoke was going to be Mace Windu. That would have changed the whole game, man. Are you kidding me? Mace Windu survived the fall, went in hiding, maybe turned to the dark side, or maybe had to use some dark side power to heal himself. Maybe Mace was so tore up, he was willing to use some dark side power and it messed his body up. Now, I'm not the only one that, I didn't originate that theory, so I'm not trying to give myself credit for that. But that's who I was always hoping Snoke was going to be, was Mace. That changes everything. Okay. You can't miss something if it never goes away right. Hoping Snoke would be Coleman Trimmer. I didn't know she said that, Omar Jade. How do you not bring her in? Because they hate those books. They hate Zahn stories. They hate the fact that we love them, and they hate the fact that they're good. That's why. But I'm glad she can get her hands on Mara. We're going to decanonize Expanded Universe, even though they took a million stuff from said Expanded Universe. Exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what they did. Shameless. The Emperor's Hand. That was Mara Jade. You got to read that. If you've never read that, you got to read that. That's in the Thrawn trilogy by Timothy Zahn, the first one. You got to read it. You got to read it. It's fine Hamill saying this, but he still made the movies and he didn't walk away. Then again, he took the money all the way to the bank. Well, with actors, to me, it's always a push-pull. Sometimes actors present themselves so obnoxiously until they kind of ruin their own stuff. So Katherine Heigl did that when she badmouthed Grey's Anatomy, and Isaiah Thomas did that, and then Brie Larson did that with her comment about what didn't work for him, and of course Rachel Zegler took it to a whole new level when she started spitting on Snow White. She literally was crapping on the movie that built Walt Disney. So sometimes actors shoot themselves in the foot so badly until they don't recover, they don't come back. They did that to themselves. But sometimes you got to remember that acting is a job, and sometimes actors want to work. And so sometimes if they want to work, they kind of have to suck it out. I mean, that's human. So it's kind of a push-pull with them. If you want to see some people let loose, then the Inside of You podcast with Michael Rosenbaum. Michael Rosenbaum famously played Lex Luthor on Smallville, and he voiced the Wally West Flash in the Timverse Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, all that. So Michael Rosenbaum has a podcast called Inside of You. He interviews a lot of the people he worked with. That's where they let loose. Danielle Panabaker, Katie Sackhoff, Katie Cassidy, Tom Welling's been on there, Brandon Routh has been on there, Erica Durance has been on there. That's when they let out what they really think. So that's where you want to go if you kind of want to hear the actors say what they really think and feel. Because Danielle Panabaker, I watched some of her interview. She told a lot of stuff about the Flash, a lot of behind the scenes dirt. She didn't name names. She didn't specifically put anybody on blast, but she did talk about some pay disparity. She did talk about them overworking her and not paying her. She did talk about herself trying to be professional and other people on the set weren't being professional, but she didn't name names. So that's where to go if you want to hear these actors really let loose. Rosenbaum's podcast is where they do that. But like I said, it's such a push-pull with them, because if you start bad-mouthing people in Hollywood, how are you going to get work? How are you going to work again? See what I'm saying? I know Rachel Zegler is going to keep getting work, but her career will never be what it could have been. Same with Katherine Heigl, same with Isaiah Thomas, same with Brie Larson. Their career is never going to be what it could have been. Hamill has been Luke Skywalker and the Joker. He's been two iconic characters. How many actors get that? So at this point, if he took care of his money, what's he got to worry about? But that's not true for every actor. So it's a bit of a push-pull for me. So sometimes they shoot themselves in the foot. Sometimes I understand they want to keep working. So you kind of have to suck it up. I understand both sides. It's fun. Star Wars is no different from Marvel. Stan Lee made some characters, but younger folks made equally as iconic stories, like Frank Miller's Daredevil and Kingpin's Rival. So I will agree with that. I will agree that Lee and Kirby and Steve Ditko and all the people in the beginning did a whole bunch of stuff, but then we had people come on and make some iconic stories. I do agree with that statement in the comics. So again, I wasn't saying that it can't happen. I was saying you're more optimistic about it than I am because I don't believe it for movies. Comic books are a different medium than movies. Also, they had Jim Shooter. Now, when we go back to the great days of Marvel with Shooter, a lot of people don't like him, but he really had a lot to do with the quality back in the day. What movie studios do is they get rid of the people that hold their feet to the fire about adhering to the source material. They did that on Rings of Power. They did that with everything in Lord of the Rings. They did that. They do that. They throw out the people that are there to hold their feet to the fire about honoring the source material and just do what they want to do. That's why I don't have that much optimism for movies. But once again, I could be wrong. I'm just not optimistic about that. I'll listen to Mark Hamill talk Star Wars all day because he's hilarious. It doesn't matter how much I say I like this and that character, they'll always call me a bigot. So I give up arguing with all those people. That's right. That's the thing to do, is just don't waste your time arguing. Because it's not an actual argument. It's not them trying to discuss a topic in good faith. It's them just trying to be angry and call names and rage bait. And what's the point of that? Okay. Who Mace Windu would have been an awesome fit. It sure would have. I mean, that would have changed the whole game. Are you kidding me? There's some more ideas I have, but I might write them someday, so I'm not going to share them. But that's what I thought. That particular idea wasn't mine. I had some more ideas, but if that was Mace, yeah. Mark Hamill's got to eat. Don't blame him for taking the money. Most people would. Best thing the sequel trilogy gave us was Galaxy's Edge. I know that man is decisive, but I think that and the Rise of the Resistance ride is awesome. I've never been, so I'll take your word for that. Theme parks are awesome. I've just never been to those. I'm actually going to have to listen to Danielle's interview now. Yeah, man. I mean, she went in on what happened on The Flash. She went, but she didn't name names. She didn't talk about, if she was talking about cast or crew or producers, she was talking about conditions and environments and things she experienced, but she got really specific. So yeah, look that up on Rosenbaum's podcast. Okay. Paula, 1966 here. Hello, I have a question. Do you think Keanu Reeves will play a great Darth Regan? I think so. I've liked most of the things I've seen Keanu in. I've liked him in, so I think he could. Heard that Abeloth might be coming in Ahsoka season 2, and now the Portman might be returning as Padme, and Abeloth will take her form to deceive Anakin. That might be interesting. At this point, I don't know if it's enough to drum up interest, though. That's the thing. My thing for Natalie Portman coming back is I want to see Dark Padme. I want to see Padme as a Sith. So even if they brought her back as a clone, because Padme was not Force sensitive, so I'm not talking about resurrecting her. They brought her back as a clone because the Emperor had all kinds of cloning stuff going on. And this time she was infused with Force abilities and she went dark. Dark Padme would kill. Are you kidding me? Empress Skywalker? Oh. I'm stoked. I guess what she's talking about. I had some ideas about that too. Okay, but to get back to your question, Paula, I've heard some of those things too. But when it comes to Star Wars, honestly, I'm like, I don't believe it till I see it. Because what has been the history of announcing things and then they fall through? This one's got a script, that one's got a script, this one's got a movie. Remember, Rian Johnson supposedly had a trilogy. Now she's talking about, Kinberg's trilogy and Soderbergh's trilogy, and I don't believe nothing they say. I don't believe it till they see it. I don't believe it until I see it. So I'm saying that that would be cool. And if Padme shows up as a cameo, and it's not really her, but it's a form of her and all that, that might be cool. I'm sure that would be fun to watch, but that's only if it's done well. Only if it's done well. And so it remains to be seen. Okay. Well, Vader True tried to resurrect her in the VR game, Vader Immortal. And then also, he met her several times in the Charles Soule books, the Darth Vader Charles Soule graphic novels. Yeah, it's my favorite picture of what Vader looks like in the Force when he's out of his suit, because Anakin has Force limbs, so his body is red and scarred, but his limbs are there in his Force form in the Charles Soule books, and I love it. And he's met Padme several times in those books, so it's not unheard of bringing Padme back. So that's not a completely unprecedented idea. So I'm not saying I'm against it. And I'm not even saying it's a bad idea. I'm saying when it comes to the movies in particular, I'm not talking about books and games. When it comes to movies in particular, I'm not going to believe it until I see it. You know, I feel like a Padme clone would be a Vader project. Yeah, really would be. All right, guys, that's going to have to be it for me today. I love talking to you guys, but I have some other things I have to do, so I'm going to have to call it there. Thank you so much to those of you that joined me live. And thank you for your comments. You know, I love having your comments, put them on the screen. I've got more stuff I've been working on. I've been working on it for a while. There are a lot of things that have been going on in my personal life, but so I'm working on getting some more of my projects out there. And so, yeah, so I will keep you posted because I'm definitely going to need your help. So I appreciate your support. I appreciate your supporting me on my YouTube channel. So please like this video and please share it. I think your comments help the algorithm. I really appreciate that. And so I'll see you on Twitter. And I've definitely got some stuff I got to do today, so I got to go for now. But again, thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back next week, same time, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time for my next weekly live, weekly comics chat, where I talk about what caught my ear in comics world for that week. Okay? Thanks again. DT2 Comics Chat out.